Hello, best of your listeners, and welcome to the best real estate investing advice ever show. I'm Theo Hicks, and today I'll be speaking with Mark Hutton. Mark, how are you doing today?
Doing great, Theo. So honored to be on.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for joining us. Looking forward to our conversation. Before we dive into that, a little bit about Mark's background. So he is a Purdue Mechanical Engineer who left the corporate world after 27 years to pursue real estate full time. He has 10 plus years of real estate investing experience with a portfolio that consists of single family, multifamily apartments, and assisted living facilities. He is based in Cincinnati, Ohio, and you can say hi to him at his email address, which is mhutton, Hutton, at mainstreetinvst.com. So, Mark, do you mind telling us a little bit more about your background and what you're focused on today?
Sure, absolutely. So as you said, I'm a mechanical engineer, but I took that degree straight into technical sales. And I worked in technical sales primarily in automotive and aerospace for many, many years, calling on customers and frankly, really enjoying the people aspect of that side of the business, using both sides of my brain, I guess. And actually, when it says I left the corporate world, it left me with a layoff. And in hindsight, couldn't be a better thing couldn't have happened. So we had started dabbling in real estate. Well, I was a reluctant landlord back in '09 when, frankly, I was about to lose my house after a layoff. And obviously, the top of '09 was not a great time to try to unload a nice big house. And so a realtor came in and said, I'll rent that. She did quickly, and I became a landlord. Sold that a few years later to the residents and didn't jump back in until 2013. After selling that, bought my first single family, bought a couple more single families with my then girlfriend, Janet. And then we made some mistakes, found our local RIA club here in Cincinnati, and that opened a ton of doors for us. And that's when we got introduced to apartments and how to potentially scale a business and actually turn it into a business. And in between that time is when I got laid off and decided, hey, we're going to try to do this full time. And we've been doing so ever since.
So, had you been investing in real estate before you left the corporate world?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we had. So my job went away in 2017. And let's see, yeah, early 2017. So we bought a first house to rehab and hold in 2013. We really didn't do, after doing that house, we bought a couple others and then a fourplex. We learned about apartments through Anthony Chara and his apartment mastery boot camp. Went to that, completely fell in love with both him, the class, and the possibilities for us. And from there, we bought our first 13-unit building with students from that group. And it was after that and on my way to buying the 25-unit that my company let me go. And again, it was a terrific, a terrific thing. We're still trying to replace our corporate incomes. My wife was then laid off 6 months after I was. And but we've kind of narrowed down all the squirrels, all the things that you can do in real estate, which are multiples, and focus on two things. So I concentrated on the apartment syndication side of our business, and Janet and I developed an assisted living home, and Janet is the administrator and runs that. Here in the Midwest, it's fairly uncommon to have a residential assisted living home built into a house. But out west, that's pretty common. And so we're bringing that concept here to Cincinnati, and we opened that in just this past September.
Perfect. Let's focus on the syndications first, and then I'll ask a few questions on the assisted living center. So you said you did a 13-unit deal and a 25-unit deal. 13 was with that group. and
Hmm.
then I'm assuming the 25 was on your own. Did you raise money for both of those deals, or was that using your own money and then moving forward, you're going to start doing syndications?
Yeah, so the 13 unit, it was just the 5 members pooling our own money, and we were certainly used all our own money in that one. Um, it was a small deal. We only needed to raise 100 grand, and the 5 of us put that together fairly easily. The 25 unit, we needed to raise 360, and we did that with our money and a very small group of investors with us. That was still a partnership deal. From there, we branched into a syndication. We did our first syndication on a 40 unit property. We bought just a little over a year ago, and we raised 600 for that in a full-on syndication. And then the next one we syndicated, we raised just over $1 million for.
So for the 25 unit deal, who were the investors on that deal? How did you know them? How did you meet them? How did you get them to invest?
Um, Most of them were acquaintances from the RIA group here in Cincinnati. And so it was people that we knew and had been talking about our deals, and we found this one, and they wanted in, and we wanted them in, and we formed a partnership. It was 6 total people, including my wife and I. So my wife and I and 4 others, and that's the way we got started with that one.
So did you present the deal at the RIA group, or did people there, based off of kind of your conversations, know that you were doing apartment deals and that you would need money? I guess I'm curious of how it became a reality. Like, did they approach you and say, "Oh, you're doing this deal, I want to invest"? Do you approach them, or was it something that kind of happened organically over time?
Well, probably a little bit of both. Organically, I'm a big mouth, so I talk a lot, and everybody knows that I do apartments. I love being called the apartment guy in our local RIA. We have a pretty big RIA with probably nearly 1,000 members. So because I'm a blabbermouth, I guess it comes from my sales background. Everybody knows that that's what I was doing. So when I did stand up in the RIA and say, "Hey, I'm looking at an apartment deal. If you're looking at potentially investing in one, come and talk to me." This is before I fully understood some of the SEC implications of doing so, but I didn't show any numbers, so I was compliant. And yeah, so and then talking to people. Um, about it and got them interested in doing the deal, and then we took it down. From there, after that deal, then we got a bit more serious in raising money and doing the syndication and doing it right. I still found many of the members through networking, through the RIA groups, as well as other groups that I'm associated with. And in the meantime, I've also, because there wasn't a big apartment focus in our RIA, our real estate investment club here in Cincy, I went to the board and said, I'd like to start an apartments focus group. And they basically said, "Are you going to volunteer?" I said, "Yeah." So they allowed me to start an apartments focus group, and it quickly became one of the largest groups within the Cincinnati area, which I'm quite proud of. And so that allowed me to help teach other people how to do this, even though I was a relative newbie with just 2 transactions in and working on a third at the time when we started it. Um, and so again, further networking and further talking to people about what you're doing.
Were the people at this event, this focus group, were they people who were interested in doing syndications themselves, or were they people who were interested in passive investing in syndications?
It was a pretty wide variety of groups. Some were looking for passive investments. Many were just curious about what is this commercial multifamily thing. Many of them just from a single family background, and how is that even possible to go buy $1 million property? Frankly, the same thing I thought 4 years ago myself. And now we have no problem going and signing on $1 million loans and taking them down. So there was a mixture of people. And again, all of them, really the common thread there was everyone was looking for knowledge on how to invest and how to get involved in the commercial segment. and I did my level best to help teach him. And I really found that's something that I really love, is teaching as well.
What so of your investors, let's kind of try to break it down here, and maybe we can do it for the your did you start the focus group before or after that first $600,000 full raise?
Before that full raise, yes.
Before? Okay, so maybe you give us a breakdown of the $600,000 you raised and then maybe the $1 million you raised. What percentage of those people came from the RIA group as a whole, and then what percentage of those people either directly came from or indirectly came from that focus group that you created?
So because we've been pretty active in the RIA club since we joined, and that hasn't been all that long ago, about 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago, I guess. I would say 3/4 of them came from the RIA group. And now I guess almost all of them came from the RIA group, because the apartments focus group is just a subset of the Cincinnati RIA group. So, but yeah, probably 1/4 of them came from, getting to know me better and spending more time with me at, once a month at this focus group. And then the rest came from more the general RIA population.
Besides so you said that you were pretty heavily involved in the RIA group. In addition to this focus group, what other things were you doing besides just showing up?
Well, I do show up, and I show up frequently, and I'm always getting engaged. So I'm always having conversations with people, seeking out people that have done things I haven't done, expanding my knowledge in areas way beyond commercial, people doing self-store and mobile homes and Airbnbs and wholesales and flips and all these kinds of things, because the more broad knowledge you have, the better you can relate to people. And so that allowed me to open other doors. And then when they turn the tables back and say, "So what are you doing, Mark?" I say, "Well, I syndicate apartments, and I raise, money for, with investors looking for safe avenues for passive investing." And that opens those doors for me. In addition to that, I have presented a few times as a speaker at the RIA meetings, and we do have an Ask the Expert table I've done a couple of times on the commercial apartments. And but frankly, majority of the time has been networking within the club and within their functions.
Thanks for sharing that. So let's transition really quickly to the assisted living center. Obviously, you said you're doing both at the same time, but maybe walk us through why you decided to expand into that sector.
So Janet and I were pretty involved in the apartment sector. Again, at that point, we had both been laid off, so we were putting all our energies into that. We attended the OREA conference, which is I think it's one of the largest in the country. Happens to be right here in Cincinnati, the Ohio RIA real estate event, and we listened to a gentleman named Gene Guarino. Janet's background is speech pathologist, a long career in speech therapy, and had worked in nursing homes the last 10 years. And when we heard Gene talk about residential assisted living, coupled with Janet's woes from working in the big box nursing homes, she looked at me in 1 minute, and we knew that we were going to go do this. This became a very passionate project for Janet. And so we've taken a parallel path since that time, with Janet taking lead on that. And obviously both of us pretty involved in it. It's a substantial investment, even in a single family home. But that's how we got introduced to that. Also did a boot camp and with Gene Guarino out in Arizona, and got started that way. It was actually a 2-year-long process from the time we started looking for a suitable home until opening. So it was quite a development process.
Perfect. Okay, Mark, what is your best real estate investing advice ever?
I would say network. Talk to everyone that you know ask questions, find out what they are doing, get involved in what they are doing. And then when the tables turn, you can, seek out the things that you're looking for as well. If you can add value to the conversation, then you'll become valuable to them, and they'll be more interested in the things you're doing. So aside from networking, I'd say just tenacity. We certainly have had some setbacks. The first rehab house we did, we finished it, and then a pipe burst, flooded during the winter, froze. We had to rehab it again, but we never stopped. So tenacity and networking, I think, are my best advice.
Okay, Mark, are you ready for the best ever lightning round?
Yes, sir.
Okay, first, a quick word from our sponsor. Okay, Mark, what is the best ever book you've recently read?
Um, and I've reviewed it recently. I read it some time back and really changed everything I looked about in real estate, which is Debt Millionaire from George Antone. George is a brilliant financial mind anyway, and completely changed my point of view on structuring debt and how to use debt effectively and safely in transactions, even as they get larger and larger.
If your business were to collapse today, what would you do next?
I think during the process, especially with the focus group, I've found that I really enjoy teaching. So if all the properties and everything went away, I would probably continue to do that. I would probably, take my knowledge and probably put a new stake in the ground and try to rebuild an apartment business again, because honestly, I truly get excited about it. I truly love it. I might make a little more time for rebuilding my old motorcycles, but uh, I'd certainly get back in the game, because I'm, like I say, thoroughly enjoying things.
Tell us about a time that you lost money on a deal. It might have been that pipe bursting story you told us about earlier. Tell us how much you lost and then what lessons you learned.
So after that property, and I lost some money, but nothing as substantial, I bought a turnkey rental property, and didn't know much about turnkey. We hadn't met anyone. We didn't even know what RIA was at that point. We bought a turnkey through a broker. It was in Kansas City. I broke every rule in the book. I looked at pictures, but I never went to see the property personally. The property I paid full retail because it was supposed to be rehabbed to a high standard, supposed to have great tenants in it, at the time of closing. None of that happened, and I still had paid full price for it. So over the course of 3 years, I lost money nearly every month I owned it, as the residents trashed it, as the rehabber didn't fix things that should have been fixed that I had to fix over time. And a crummy property manager that I didn't get the opportunity to vet because I just bought them with the deal. So again, when I finally had the opportunity, was contractually able to get out from under the property manager and sell the property, I sold it to a wholesaler in Kansas City through their RIA, and lost $30,000 on the sale. So I usually summarize it as pretty much lost money every month and then lost 30K at the end. Lessons learned: never buy a property without putting your human eyeballs on it. Pictures are great, but they cannot tell the whole story. Vet your property managers. Everything we have, even single family, I have right 6 doors down from where I'm sitting right now. We have professionally property managed. But vet your property manager and make sure they're someone that you can really work with. So go see the property, vet your property manager, and make sure your property manager has good vetting processes for the tenants as well. You want your residents to take care of your place, and none of that happened in this deal.
Let's talk about the best deal you've done. This could be the deal you made the most money on, or best in some other form.
The best one was when we syndicated, and we closed just after Christmas this past year. It was a receivership deal. It's a very large deal, 239,000 square feet of commercial space. We happen, again, because of networking and getting to know the brokers in the area. One of the brokers is a receiver. and he showed me this shopping mall. And I said, "That's retail. Go away. I don't want to talk to you." So after months of haranguing me, I finally took a look at it. So this property had a $6 million loan on it, was in receivership. The bank had foreclosed on it, and we were able to get that under contract for just over $2 million. And the $6 million loan vanished. So we picked up almost 250,000 square feet of commercial space, about 40% occupied, for about $2 million, just over $2 million. That's the one we raised a little over $1 million for, because it had a lot of deferred maintenance, as you might imagine. And so we've only operated that for a few months, but we've never, all the tenants there have not missed any payments. They're all credit tenants. We're learning about the commercial space, rental space, because that's something we weren't familiar with. I'm more familiar with apartments, but it's operating, even at only 40% occupied, it's operating at a terrific cap rate, well into double digits cap rate, and sky's the limit as to the ultimate valuation. Our plan is in 4 years, get the value back up to $6 million, and then flip it and triple all our investors' money, and make everyone happy.
Yeah, that is an amazing deal. All right, Mark, the last question: what's the best ever place to reach you?
To reach me, reach out on my email. As you said before, that's Hutton, M as in Mark, Hutton, at Main Street. Our company is Main Street Real Estate Investments, so it's at Main Street INVST. Don't put the E in there, you won't get me. So Hutton at mainstreetinvst.com, and I look forward to talking with you. I really enjoy helping newbies out. I get people call me all the time. "Hey, I got this deal," helping people walk through a deal, walk through numbers, whatever. If I can help them out, I'm always happy to do so.
Perfect, Mark. Well, thanks for joining us, and that best ever listeners. That link to the email will be in the show notes, so you won't have to mess up and not and accidentally put the E in there. But Mark, thanks for joining us. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I would say the biggest takeaway that I got, and I'm sure the best ever listeners got as well, is how you walked us through exactly how you went from doing these smaller single family deals to going into a coaching program, and from that coaching program you're able to do a 13 unit deal with a bunch of partners, with a total raise of $100K, so $20,000 ish out of pocket. And then from there transitioned to doing a 25 unit deal, and this was people that you met at your RIA, right? So you talked about the power of the RIA group when it comes to raising money, and you mentioned more specifically what you can do at the RIA. You mentioned that everyone there knew that you were the apartment guy, and really whenever you talk to anyone, you'd first ask them questions, get to know what they're doing, gain information and knowledge from them, so that you can in turn relate with more people. And then eventually when the tables turn, they ask you what you're doing, you kind of have I do apartments, I raise money from passive investors, here's the benefit of it. And from there, you were able to raise most of your money from people at the RIA event. Eventually, you started to give presentations and be in panels there. And then ultimately, you ended up creating your own focus group on apartments specifically. But overall, the concept is to go to RIA every time they have a meeting and be engaged. And the cherry on top would be becoming a speaker and starting your own focus group. But just by going there alone can result in you doing, obviously doing deals, learning more, but also having people that can invest in your deals. And that was essentially your best ever advice too, which was to network, to make sure you're asking questions, and then get involved in what they're doing, add value to them, and then in turn you're valuable to them, and you can then seek what it is you want to get. And then your other piece of best ever advice was tenacity. You gave the example of the pipes bursting, which best ever listeners, who are loyal know all about my story of my first deal and the pipes bursting. So I can completely relate to you when it comes to the pipes bursting and having to, you know, work your way through that. So again, Mark, really appreciate you joining us. Best ever listeners, as always, thank you for listening. Have a best ever day, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.
Thank you. Take care.